And
Oh wait, let me
and
check.
where is this going live to? Like it's not going if I go to now my YouTube
What's the YouTube name of your channel?
my channel is I don't know if it's just Bryan Kromrey or I don't know if it's just my YouTube name. What's my channel? Oh, it says upcoming. Here's my
Brick
channel.
House Games? Or Brick House Games?
That's my other one. That's kind of my one. I have one that's under Bad Crow Games, and that's so. Let me just message in all chat. This is the channel I'm trying to go to.
Uh,
It says it's scheduled, but then it says upcoming. Oh no, it is
uh,
live. I just had to mute myself. Okay, so you should be able to actually see it.
just a sec.
Got a delay.
Yeah, delays are
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and company of heroes fans of all ages. We're going to be doing a design overview, basically how to make a new map. Just to keep in mind, the first thing I want to state is that this is the one. This is like the second stretch goal that we unlocked, the 155,000K stretch goal, where I will be making basically a new map for basically a mission map is kind of what we call them, just because there's a little bit of confusion with map panels and mission maps. So if I ever misspeak, this is going to be just a new mission map. This one, and what I'm going to go with here is I want to use this Ardennes Forest panel 1 as well as the Stalingrad 1 panel. As you can kind of see in this configuration, and you'll kind of see in some of the mission maps, they're not obviously as perfect as, for instance, Ardennes 1 and 2, but we did try to work on the blendability, and this isn't the final one. So it's probably been touched up a little bit more by the time you get it. And some things also are out of date here, like these buildings. For second edition maps, these are going to be dark gray, for instance, these buildings. Just so the second edition is going to help differentiate the basically heavy cover from building cover. And if I just want to stay here, yeah, obviously nothing's final. I just want to cover that. So prototype. This is in the tool that I'm using right now, Tabletop Simulator. I actually like to use this as a tool to create maps, so I can move pieces around and kind of get, a feel for it, if that makes sense. And also this red line, that's not going to be on the map. Just kind of all these things. Just kind of keep that in mind as I'm designing this map, as we're designing this map kind of together. I'm going to have Rudy, one of the play testers, give feedback, and that way we can kind of keep
Hello.
it active. Hello, Rudy. But in general, this stream is going to be a little bit more casual. I just kind of want to go over what's going on, and also to kind of give you tools for, like, even though there's a lot of missions in the mission booklet, to kind of go over as it's kind of like a bonus, if you want, if you will, if you want to see it that way, to make your own missions. Really, kind of give guidelines of if you want to move things around, you don't have to use what's in the mission booklet. And I don't know if we've ever clearly stated that enough or well enough, or if you ever ran into it. So if you see this video, maybe this could help you with that. So kind of why we're like cutting out the World Builder pack is a lot of feedback in general was, and why it's kind of the new Legacy map pack, is there was a lot of feedback that it just takes so long. I think a lot of people, don't get me wrong, there are certain people that really want to spend an hour, 2 hours making their own map and having to do hex by hex by hex, but those maps are a little bit too blank. They're too much of a canvas, and some people like that. That's fair. But I think a lot more backers really want to take a thing out of take it out of the box, set up the map, and play. So that's kind of what we're going for now. It's kind of a little bit different approach where you can, we're going to have some extra tiles in that legacy map pack. You can kind of customize things and, oh, cool, can we put this here? Can we put that here? And kind of modify the existing maps. And then, kind of as they are in the mission booklet now, none of the maps have the resources printed on them. There was kind of mixed feedback from first edition, so now we just went with a different approach where everything's going to start blank. So again, that kind of lends to that each map can be modified. So as a backer, as playing your own games, feel free to do so. As another note, yeah, we do have a note that these maps do have a little bit different brightness, and this ice is a little bit different. We are gonna try to improve that as much as we can. But there is kind of a different thematic feel that I was going for with Ardennes, where the Stalingrad, war-torn city feel, where it's a little bit darker, and then the brightness of a forest in the middle of winter kind of feel was just different feels that I was trying to portray with the brightness. But we're probably gonna tone that down a little bit. So getting started, I kind of already touched on, we have Ardennes Forest and Stalingrad 1. We have basically our tokens, and keep in mind, these tokens are just for Tabletop Simulator. We are still going to have the triangle tokens for second edition. The new thing with the tokens in second edition is you're going to see this when we're making the maps. We're going to do like kind of two tokens a lot on a hex, And that's kind of the standard in second edition to kind of increase the amount of resources available and not make it so that there's a really high amount of flags per map, if that makes sense. So that there's going to be the triangle tokens on the back, at least on one side of almost all of them, is going to be a dual combination. So like half of it yellow with the manpower, half of it red with the munitions, for instance. So hopefully that helps get into this. All right. Another thing to note with this map is we don't have the cathedral. If you're wondering what this is kind of that Ardennes panel that has the cathedral. We don't have the cathedral model. Oop, I have a flag there. We don't have the cathedral model in Tabletop Simulator. So that is why you kind of see this house here. That's kind of the cathedral tower, just to note that before we begin. All right,
Yep.
I think. Did I miss anything, Rudy? Anything you could think of?
No, you pretty much covered everything, I guess. So we
All
can
right.
continue.
Sure. Okay, so my first standard is I kind of want to swing back to it later, but it's kind of a key point to start with is as you hover in TTS, just kind of as a guideline, when I hover over maps in TTS, you'll see the stockpiles. So that's kind of the first standard in second edition is that the income is always 111 for income, so that when you capture additional points, you'll be able to easily calculate it if you like mess up your income. You'll always be able to, okay, I captured 1 manpower, therefore I have 2 manpower income. So that's always kind of straightforward. The next thing to note is that the stockpiles are different per map. So I kind of made this like the kind of base before we got started here. This Moscow outskirts. That's going to be the name of the map that I'd like to design here. Ignore that Ardennes forest. That's just a little tag here. I can probably just wipe that out. People aren't confused. And let's start with 640. But again, we'll see what the feel of the map is, right? So that's kind of how I want to design maps in general. I kind of have a theme that I'm going for. And yeah, we can start with these basic spawn points. So there's going to be some interesting dynamics looking at this map before we get started. One
If you
is, go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah, if you start with those incomes on the map, do you have like a specific mindset in mind for the player? Like, hey, if you play this map or that map, you can go like more infantry heavy or vehicle heavy?
No, you're exactly right, Rudy. That's actually a great point to point out early here. Is there's a lot of tendencies I like to lean on certain maps based on what's available on that map. So kind of exactly as Rudy's pointing out, if there's a double bunker, which is this right here, again, graphically, if you have Train Pack 2, you'll be able to actually, just for TTS, I kind of do this smaller bunker in the middle. But in real life, you'll be able to, in second edition, put a bunker here and a bunker here with your Train Pack 2. Otherwise, again, they'll be kind of a different color. They'll be that dark gray, just again as a
Yeah,
reminder. But if there's multi-hex buildings, which the bunker is, in this case a double bunker, this multi-hex building over here, maybe I'll switch colors, maybe that'll be easier to see because it's a little white on white for those watching with my mouse pointer. So this double building here, and then the cathedral, right? So there's going to be a lot of building combat with infantry on different hexes and assaults things potentially. So that to me we want to really focus on first and foremost, probably looking at minimal, kind of that 6 most likely manpower start. That's probably a good guideline to start with there, just because we do want to have enough infantry on the board to fight over these critical areas on the map. So that's kind of the first thing I like to kind of touch on. And yeah, there's a decent amount of buildings overall. It kind of is kind of the outskirts theme, right? We have this building kind of on the edge of this kind of path, this dirt road here. It's kind of like just the worn down snow, the bunker. So basically, let's start out thematically. We can actually put a building there, kind of a little thing. Side note, just lock crate 1. There is technically a building here. Now in second edition, you can spawn there on that hex with infantry, but obviously that's not going to be too critical of a spot
So
during the course of
the
the game.
if the enemy would be able to destroy the building, then the enemy basically loses a spawn point, right?
Sure, but that's, I mean, can that happen? Yeah. Is it that big of a goal? I think if you focus on that, you're probably gonna be giving up a lot of important things on the map. But that's a good point.
Yeah, but just a note, you know.
Rudy likes these notes, so he's
Yeah,
always good here
yeah.
for commentary.
Hmm.
So key thing to note is, yeah, they're gonna have blue's probably gonna have priority over that bunker, so that could be an interesting dynamic. And then there's also this cathedral here. So starting out, have a tendency to make a lot of my maps. I like them wide now, especially in second edition. This is kind of a 1v1 design map. We really want to encourage like a wide battlefront generally on most maps. I mean, some people like variety there, but that's kind of something that I have a tendency to lean into with map design. We have some ice. As a note, also, I kind of want to touch on this now. The latest version of the map panels do actually have a little ice symbol on all the tiles that are ice. And in addition to that, for those that are colorblind, we're making the new panels colorblind friendly, where the reds are going to have these red dashes here that I'm hovering over. That's going to have a dash. And then the yellows are going to have one dot. And then the greens are going to have two dots. And that's not going to necessarily be on each and every side, but it'll be kind of on, a common side. Sometimes there'll be one or two per hex accordingly. But it's to help, kind of help those people that have issues with the different, colors with colorblind issues.
To
So,
follow up on that, do the buildings get 3 dots on the
well,
if
no,
they are
because they're
turned gray?
they're a dark gray. So, I think that is more of a it's so
Okay.
it's kind of an off black. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be blatantly clear, if that makes sense. It should be
Yeah.
very clear.
Okay. Okay.
It should
Fair
be.
enough.
I don't foresee that being an issue based on what
Okay.
we've run into with testing with it. And then the purples still are gonna still be purple. So the key ones, the green, the yellow, and the reds that you see as you kind of see on this map. Again, a lot of these aren't gonna be green. They're gonna be that dark gray. So there's actually no heavy cover on this map. All the greens are gonna be gray. So all the yellow lines will have one dot. But anyway, moving on to the map
Okay.
design. We have
Yeah.
kind of a nice congestion over here on this kind of to the left here. I'm going to call it the west of map. Kind of call it north, south, east, and west, right? Or no, the west over there. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of congestion on both sides, the east and the west. But the west over here, there's kind of some nice congestion with destroyed buildings. That could be interesting. Gonna put some stuff in here. So let's start. I like to try to see if I can do asymmetrical first. To some degree, but let's start with a little bit of it with some symmetry and then kind of get a feel for it, maybe bounce
The
back.
the map inherently how it is already looks like it's asymmetrical because you got the church on the uh, at the blue side, but no church on the red side.
Right.
Same with blue side has a bunker, the red side doesn't.
Yeah, I mean
So
that's all.
is that on purpose, or did you have a specific mindset about it with creating these panels?
Well, this panel again, this is kind of not the standard configuration, right? So this
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like I don't want to call it a bonus map, but in some ways it is, right? Because the game was really designed typically with two panels in mind. So we had Ardennes 1, Ardennes Forest 2, Stalingrad 1, Stalingrad 2. So now that we have more winter panels, we can kind of open up more of these interlinking of the panels to make different maps, right? So this is kind of one of those, again, to touch on it. So it wasn't originally designed with this necessarily in mind. I did try to, after, once I got the map started, I did say, okay, well, let me kind of plan ahead to a certain degree. So I wanted this down the road as an option. So even if it doesn't make it in the mission booklet, people at home, if they get the legacy map pack, oh, cool, let me try this map out, let me make a map again. So yeah, a lot of them are, now I don't want to say afterthoughts because there was some process there, but obviously the main focus was on that kind of map panels working together. But there was also some consideration whenever possible of kind of as you see, like there are certain things here where you see some snow, some ice. Obviously, right, the river down the middle, the frozen river, kind of concept was kind of, so there was a lot of design goals in mind for those watching. So maybe we'll start with this, a little bit of victory points and manpower out wide to kind of make a front. Maybe we'll kind of, typical standard front is kind of this cross line here. Probably start with that as a mindset. That's typically a safe mindset when you start making a map. Like Rudy already pointed out, there's just a lot of natural asymmetry on this map. So we'll kind of just play around here. A lot of it is trial and error, to be honest. So like even whatever we finish with here today, after we start playtesting it, right, it is very likely to change. Like there could be issues with it. Typically, you do want to, obviously, we want to make as much as it balanced as possible. There are some new maps that we have as asymmetrical. So those asymmetrical maps that really are asymmetrical, players could find, you could find that, hey, this map always has this faction always has an advantage on this map. So like certain factions might be better on that map, or certain sides on that map. So there's more asymmetrical maps probably are gonna not necessarily be 50-50 balanced, and that's kind of a cool thing. Like a lot of people are asking for, hey, can you have more options in the game for balancing out beginner players against advanced players? Well, that's kind of an option you can do naturally as you know, playing the game. Where, hey, look, you don't need to come up with house rules. We have these available maps as I'm teaching you the game. Why don't you pick, you know, as you play the map, maybe you want to play the other side, or you think one side's better. So like after you play a game with someone, you say, oh, this side of Carentan, for instance, one of them's Carentan, that side's better, that side's stronger. So that way you can have a, you know, use that map when you're playing against someone who, you know, hasn't played as many games as you perhaps. Yeah, have them pick their side and maybe point that out. Say, hey, look, this side we've found so far to be a little bit stronger. So that's why I think there's a lot of backers that really want symmetrical maps, and I understand that. But we already have most of them. Like the vast majority, especially those revised maps, are almost all symmetrical. So that's why I think coming in now with the new maps, we have a little bit more leeway.
Yeah, I can still remember when we were testing what now called the Morrow River panels,
Hmm.
or the Morrow River map. We tested a lot with buildings. Should we put buildings on there on upsides of the river or not? Or with the bridges, do we take one bridge or two bridges, etc.? And yeah, it required a lot of playtesting as well to see where the thin line of the balance was in a sort of way.
Yeah, certainly.
So
So I'm just trying to throw. Sometimes I like to just kind of throw these resource tokens out there, these capture points, to get a feel for it, to see how it looks. Just eyeballing it, right? There's some things that I'm trying to keep in mind. Essentially, you want to be careful with 4 hexes from spawn, certain things like that, because Soviet conscripts in second edition have a speed die. So as you get more familiar with the game, you can kind of, like, I can kind, I've watched so many games, dozens and dozens, probably over 100, as we're, you know, playtesting second edition, you know, not counting the ones I played, where you kind of see tendencies of what opening. So I'm kind of playing that in my head. So for instance, like this was here, a Soviet conscript can speed die 1, 2, 3 and capture it, where other factions don't have that round one. So again, that kind of goes in the design philosophy of maps. And kind of as you know, kind of as I touched on, there's more resources on maps now. The new standard is usually 5 or 6 of a resource. That's kind of why I had those tokens set aside, ready to go. But again, they don't, you know, some people want some maps with less resources. You know, so, or like maybe of just a particular resource. So let's try to. I just kind of want to get a feel for the map, and then I can kind of walk out after like initial design, we start moving things, what I'm like, kind of that process that I'm describing here, what I kind of foresee happening. What's the critical points of the map, and what are people going to be going for? I do actually, this spot looks really interesting to me. I want something over there. And let's see if we can match it over here. So we can't perfectly match it, right? 1, 2, 3 because of this destroyed building, but sometimes, again, this is a little bit asymmetrical map, so we can lean into it a little bit, because that one looks really fun and interesting over there. Kind of force blue to go over here, kind of encourage red to go over here for that manpower, which is really critical. Looking at, so we can do 5 or 6. The one thing to note is this map does have an option for the 5. It really depends on the layout, because sometimes you get this like 4 hex diamond in the center. Sometimes you get, when you arrange the panels differently, you get this kind of single hex in the center, but it's an ice hex. So that kind of pushes me away as a designer from having like a victory point right here. That doesn't mean we couldn't have one here, right? But that just, I don't, it's kind of one thing, kind of feedback from first edition. Kind of ran into that with Stalingrad, where having the victory capture point on the ice, a lot of people were just not playing the ice rules because of it. So it's kind of something to kind of keep in mind designing the map, is that the ice is fun, right? It's kind of cool, and I want there to be tough decisions, or do I go on the ice or not? But having a victory point on the ice is probably something that I found I tend have a tendency to want to shy away from.
And other resources, like maybe like a manpower on the ice or munition on the ice.
Yeah, I think munitions would be a very interesting option on the ice. So that's something we can kind of keep on mind for this map. It could be very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. There we can move things around, but currently there's not. Let's just step away from that for a second. Is there any interesting spots? There's not really. These aren't really ice. It's just little stream parts. This is ice, and there's a whole strip of ice over here, right? There's
Yeah.
this. Not necessarily a symmetrical replication of that on the other side. So we'll kind of keep it in mind. Maybe, what's this? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So like this one over here, and then this one over here, perhaps. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah. But then you would still make it a single point, right? Not a double point.
Yeah, I mean, we still have some flexibility
Yeah.
for that. I'll kind of keep that in mind as a backup, but
Mhm.
let's just start with this original thing, just because I kind of had a base
Yeah.
concept, and then we can swing back to that idea, because that does raise an interesting question for that. A lot of people
So,
might
so
want that.
just to make sure, if you put like a point on the ice and a unit is capturing it, it's getting shot at with high explosive or flame damage. The ice breaks. The capture point is lost then as well, right?
Hey,
Just
that
like how it is with buildings.
so no, so the capture point it'll freeze over. That's kind of the philosophy we had, is that it would freeze back over at the end of the round, so it's still a valid hex and everything. So that's kind of how ice works. So it'd
Okay.
still be a capture point. It's just the unit is lost. So, but great,
Okay.
great question
Fair
though,
enough.
Rudy.
Yeah.
Question. So we have this 3 away. This is kind of looking a little bit open space here, because these are 4 away. It looks like. Would there be an
130. Yeah.
interesting building? So there's not really a matching building, like perhaps like as a fuel. Again, kind of buildings do run into that, kind of like Rudy touched on. So if we had a resource in a building and the building's destroyed, that resource is basically neutralized for the rest of the game. It's gone basically off the map. So
Yeah.
sometimes,
Because.
ooh, what about this one? Is this 4 away? What about this, Rudy? This and this. I think I kind of
Ooh.
like this.
Yeah. That still gives a little bit of risk reward.
Yeah, I like that one. Okay.
Because it's like in a 2-turn range of an enemy unit, but still.
I do like
Would you
that.
even go so far to put a victory point on that?
I have a tendency not to. On some maps we have done that, but there
Yeah.
hasn't, especially. That's tough because there are 4 others. If I did do something with that, I'd probably want this one closer to the spawn somewhere. Something like there, so that kind of. Because I don't want to really run into a long, drawn out game, because the new standard is 21 victory points, so that if those buildings do
Yeah.
get blown up, you still want to see victory point accumulation. And you don't want a game to feel stale. It could just drag
But
on.
for second edition, because you can get already a lot more resources, it seems, compared to the first edition maps, because almost everything is like a double resource. Doesn't it incentivize, if that's the word, to get the units out and start killing each other if there is less victory points on the board? Like
Well,
you would force them to play more against the combat. Yeah,
yeah, I mean
more engaging.
to some degree, but on the counterpoint of that is like if both victory points are here, they're going to be hard for like blue to capture. So like the counterpoint to that is there's just a lot of dynamics where it's not as easy as like I see what conceptually you're saying, but there's just a lot of pieces, moving parts to kind of how a game would play out. Like for instance, I kind of let's just start to go over it, right. I would really see red as putting an infantry here turn one and moving out and capturing this, and then turn two, 1, 2, 3 onto this, right? So that's kind of what I
Yeah.
foresee. Guess comment here. Going back to victory point on ice in the middle, cathedral with MG and bunker have range to it, but red has no building covering it. No, see that's a great point. That's a oh, it's Dugo. But awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, Dugo. Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Going back to victory points on the ice. Yeah, so that's another thing is that the bunker is covering this area. That's another very critical point in map design. You don't want to, yeah, there's some asymmetry here, but so even if we're making a lot of the resources symmetrical, there's sometimes the features of the map, like this bunker, can, kind of break that symmetry. Like, for instance, red can put an MG in this building and easily cover this spot, right? And, blue can counter the same thing. Even easier, arguably, to put NMG in this
Yeah.
bunker. But that's fine, so you can kind of see that MGs now in second edition have the 3 range. That balance is probably fine, right? So, again, not
Yeah,
every map.
whereas for blue is like for red the like fuel is in 3 range. Same is for the victory point over here. If it would be in the left side, it can't cover then the manpower. But then again, if you put in a bunker one here, it still has, yeah, it can cover 3 points. But it can't cover the manpower. Even if it's on the left side, it still can't cover the manpower because it's too far away. And then he can't cover the fuel, so he can only cover this one point. Yeah. So there are pros and cons to it, I guess.
Yep. Kind of moving things around here. Find the ideas here a little bit. See what this is feeling like. And then 2 victory points could kind of put in. So the new standard is basically, I didn't touch on this quite yet, is 6 flags per panel. So we're at that right now. Pretty much. I mean, we'll call these, these 2 centers are whatever, but we're at the 12, right? So how does this look? Where's the interesting spots? So there's a lot of dead space here, right? So I kind of see blue going here, here, and here, which is fine. There's not really too much of a choice with the 3 starting infantry. Is that the biggest deal? Not necessarily. Then going from there, you kind of want to plan out again, probably the second round at a bare minimum. This one going here, this one going here, and this one not not quite making it to there. So this is kind of I don't want to say a no man's land, but kind of a no man's land for blue going into round 2, unless they're the Soviets, right? That's again something to note. And same thing over here. They can kind of go into this building. So I kind of like red spot over here in that regard. That's something to keep in mind here. There's also red's kind of pushed out wide, struggling across. So red's kind of, so there's kind of this almost. It's a very tight. It's not quite as diagonal, right? It's kind of a little bit more like this, which has a tendency on some of these maps. I would probably like to see perhaps I was gonna say this, like down one more, these two down one more to here. Kind of encourage this and that option, different option. However, it's kind of tough to say. On the flip side, if this was moved out wider, you could have capturing here, then here. But then you can't capture that. That's a little tough choice, right? Because there's not a perfect spot there. What do you think, Rudy? Any seeing anything interesting here with this? I
Mm.
almost want to break it up already. I'm not really liking it too much, but just what your any thoughts you have on this?
Oh yeah, it looks well. The points look symmetrical. Yeah, sure. You know, blue would struggle to go on top here a little bit because it's easier to access for the red. Same the other way. Blue has a bit more defensive capabilities because of the cathedral being here.
Mm-hmm.
So blue is in I would say a little bit of a bigger advantage because how he can move into the cathedral, get into the tower as well for the extra spotting range. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. So I think this would be a more dangerous place or a more willing place to capture and defend than this would be in a way because of the favorable defenses because you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 building hexes basically from where you can defend this entire area, especially with MGs. Then it's like let's say they are in this building, so yeah, it's tough, you know. And then for this side, yeah, you have lots of dead hexes with the 3 destroyed buildings, of course. Whereas here is only one that's really in the way, so to say, because this one isn't really doing anything. You could maybe say the same for this one, but yeah, these two with the bunker, yeah, the bunker has some cover, but not as much as the cathedral or the houses really can do. But yeah, I can see why it's for this panel it's a bit more difficult because of the asymmetry of the maps. Um, could you also say like you would flip like one of the maps around, so like the cathedral would be on this side? So then you have the cathedral here, the bunker here.
Well, see, that's actually a very good point to note. Is that due to the panel size, you can't see how it's a little bit different over here. So to
Yeah.
rotate it around, it wouldn't match up. Kind of show you that. That's actually that's a great question you actually have. Key thing to know, map design. Here with another one. I think it sounds like you're saying something like this.
Yeah.
Has some weird snap points. I'll try to hover over it and show you from above. Hopefully that shows it.
Yeah.
You can kind of see these don't perfectly align from above. Kind of. That's kind of one thing with the map panels is you kind of run into a
Uh,
situation where sometimes it has to be orientated a certain way, unfortunately. This is kind of one of those cases, right? Because this would be kind of,
oh, because you have like a half hex here while you
right.
got a whole
So you can
hex
kind
here.
of see, yeah, you can kind of see how this
Yeah.
matches up, but then it's a half
Yeah.
hex. Would be a half hex there. That's an
Well,
interesting idea, but no, it's a great thing to propose. That's kind of why
yeah,
I already had.
for for this it isn't too bad like this, I believe. This lines up good, you know. If
Yeah,
you
that's
see.
right. That's kind of
Yeah,
an inverse
yeah, but
of.
with this, no,
Well, those two are that's the same panel, right? So people wouldn't have that. Those two Arden. You'd be looking at Arden 2. But that's
no,
okay.
but um,
That's a good idea too. I mean that's something, right? But
uh,
does that run into the same issue? It looks like it does, yeah. You can start to
yeah,
see they don't match up
well,
completely.
yeah,
So
that's unfortunate.
yeah, so sometimes you get a cool idea and the map panels don't line up, unfortunately. So that happens. But
Yeah.
moving along back to this map, I kind of move things around here. So this kind of, I think this kind of spices it up a bit. You get your manpower early. So this might change it so that there was 3 manpower early because we had these over like up here, these two, just recently. We had them up here, so you can get a lot of manpower early. But I think we can kind of soften that. We still have the 2, so we're gonna our incomes at the end of round 1 are very almost always gonna be we're looking at 3 manpower income because people are gonna capture 2. All right, that's gonna be a tendency. And then they have
Hmm.
a choice. So this one makes it very brutal along that center line here. This one looks like very intense combat over the bunker, over the cathedral. This house is going to be very critical for red. And then we kind of even have these outside houses. So this is a little bit different than a lot of maps. I'm actually
Hmm.
really digging this map so far. The only question is, do we go this? Do we just kind of double down on these manpower victory points that it's going to be hard to capture? So I'm not too keen on it, but we're probably going to want something there. So let me keep thinking and brainstorming. Maybe you're right, Rudy, though. Maybe, what if this? What if we do... I was kind of thinking this here, one of the fuels there, and try Rudy's idea of having a victory point in the building. Kind of like this. The one issue, I don't want to call it necessarily an issue, but the one issue with this kind of is I think I would prefer victory point to be a little bit more in play, perhaps, and also start the fuel. Perhaps like
I
this.
would say yes and no. I think one victory point should be accessible for both players a bit easier, you know, and the rest of the victory points they should be really thought of in a way. So you always have like this what you told me before. You like to have things being like a tickle for income. So if
Trickle,
you
yeah.
have a victory point close, then you always have like that tickle income. So then at least for a couple turns, you're pretty safe with getting that victory point at least, getting a couple of victory points for those 2-3 rounds. Um, but you still have to fight off for the rest of the victory points.
Right.
And then you still have like the battles, but you also have like this tickle that always is there.
Right. So this is kind of a tendency I like on a lot of maps where the munitions are there's not too much of a hyper focus on having them early. That's kind of why I favor the fuel here to get the fuel going. I would almost like this perhaps, though, on the flip side to kind of break up munitions. Perhaps it kind of makes it a little. There's a lot of maps in second edition that I kind of leaned into the double of a single resource. It was a
Yeah,
cool
Hugo
idea.
says now 6 resources at 2 range, plus 2 resources at 3 range.
6 resources at 2 range. I need a little bit more. Oh, that bunker covers so many resources. Yeah. So what's cool about that bunker is that one does cover sources at 2 range.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, for the
that
bunker.
spot
Yeah.
is gonna be kind of
A
Over,
hotspot.
it's going to be a very hot spot, and the same thing over
It's
here.
that spot is going to be a machine gun heaven.
But on the flip side, red could have a machine gun in here. So the key thing to note, one thing as you're kind of seeing this and you're kind of seeing all this congestion, right? One thing to note is that you're kind of looking at the new machine gun arcs. So that's kind of very critical in balance and faction balance. So you're looking at that, and a machine gun can set up here and point, pointing this way where it kind of cones out here. So if a machine gun's pointing this way, this is capturable. If a machine gun's pointing this way, both of these are capturable. So all of these little things add up. So yeah, blue is going to really love this hex, right? But on the flip
hmm
side, red is kind of inclined to be the aggressor on this map, right? Because red gets a
Yeah.
lot of cool houses that they can get into on blue's side of the map. So like this cathedral, if red kind of gets heavily in this cathedral, I could see this cathedral making a huge difference on this map. So I don't know. I'm actually liking this map. If it looks a little bit different, and why it looks different than a lot of other maps is a lot of points that are close. We kind of in second edition, a lot of the maps spread them out quite a bit more. So there's kind of this feeling of okay, 2 hexes away, 2 hexes away, 2 hexes away. So you kind of see this like strip, but sometimes that
Yeah.
can be a cool option. Because what you can do with infantry is you can move to, and then with your third command point, you can build sandbags. So, or inversely, before you leave a hex, you can make barbed wire. So barbed wire and then charge at another point. So there's a lot of different flexibility there.
Was about to say that that can be interesting because the most of the resources are 2 hexes away, like on the center line. Then that would make for some fun plays, I think, between both players. Going to a capture point, fighting for it, assaulting it, of course, things like that. So that could be pretty interesting. And then with buildings covering with like maybe machine gun fire or having a mortar team behind it or mortar emplacement as backup, that could be yeah, quite devastating as well. Especially if you go like on this area with
Mhm.
the ice and everything, that you probably have maybe 1 or 2 units might be getting stuck on the ice. So you have your mortar team with high explosive and a splash damage just smashing away that ice underneath them.
Yeah, I
That
mean
yeah.
that's kind of cool. So like so kind of walk through openings now a little bit. I'm really
hmm
digging this map. I think this is going to be a good spot to kind of wrap up this initial kind of first design of the map and get some playtesting on it. Is I really
Yeah.
like this opening, right? It's kind of obvious to kind of go grab this,
hmm
and then you have a second one grab this one, right? So that's kind of so you get 2 manpower, so you're going to go up to 3. So victory point, and then a victory point, also cool to kind of get that going. And then the victory points do seem to be have a decent spread. So there's a little bit of like kind of some here and here, right? So then walking through what happens is now since second edition you can walk through a building, enter it, and leave it in the same round. So this whole thing walking through the bunker to get to here is an option. So that unit, for instance, timing from blue's perspective can go here or here with 3 movement. Nothing in the way. Same thing for red, 3 movement, 3 movement. There's not really any issues there, right? So there's again, this map kind of is going to reward aggression. A lot of infantry aggression. That was kind of the theme of the map, right? Having these little building cool spots, a cathedral, the double bunker, this double building. And like even this double building here has got its eyes on 3. So yeah, it's not as far out as this bunker comparatively, but these are 2 victory points out of the 6. Again, a
hmm
machine gun can't cover both of these set up a certain way. They'd have to adjust their arc to kind of keeping things, flowing and moving. But yeah, the same thing on this side. So blue can kind of go here and then here or here. Same thing with this one
Yeah.
here or here. So this one could actually go across, right? So this is kind of a very critical. Actually, it has 3 options technically, right? So there's kind of a lot of dynamics going into round 2, which is a very nice thing to look for because you can go aggressive or, for instance, I know this might seem like an interesting play. not that cool perhaps, but going from here to here, right, and getting in the building, right? So you can kind of start positioning for future rounds from this hex, planning to kind of that next round, round 3, you can capture
Yeah.
this. You can go out, capture wide this fuel and victory point. So you can kind of see there's just a lot of dynamics kind of in this map built in. So I'm liking this map. Definitely an infantry focus, but not too much. That's kind of again why we don't want too many resource points in buildings themselves. But next to them is
Mhm.
fine, right? So you can get the tier 1 light vehicles capturing them. That's kind of another side note that's key to point out. But it's kind of cool to have these out wide for the infantry, right? So it kind of rewards you for good infantry play. So
Yeah.
keeping your infantry alive all game, Rudy, that's kind of critical on this map.
Yeah, I feel it at sometimes. I know. I like my vehicles. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean vehicles are fun.
Yeah, exactly. But I can already see like visualizing a bit. If I would play Wehrmacht, I would preferably start at the blue area,
Okay.
the blue spawn zone. Then I would go like 2 MG teams, one Grenadier squad.
Hmm?
Grenadier squad for my first opening move. But I wouldn't take the first turn. I would let red open as the first turn. So I can start with the second turn. Because in the first turn, I can go to in this setup, to the fuel manpower. With the MG team that I spawn from the building or beside it, I go to the manpower victory point. And then with the third MG team, I would go towards the church.
Right.
So when I start the second round, if I would start, then I can deploy my MG team in a bunker, preferably on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
Aim at here, then I can cover these 2 sides already because of the arc.
Yeah, I mean, so that's actually a good
So
discussion, right?
that would be a good play for. Well, you can do the same with the US or any faction that can start with an MG team. I would say no, US doesn't start with it, but the British maybe. Soviets do too, right or not?
Soviets don't have an MG, but
Oh,
they
they
have a
don't have.
sniper.
Okay. Oh yeah. A sniper wouldn't be bad either, to plop them somewhere down in the middle of the field
Mm-hmm.
to that they have that range and to cover those areas. So that's nice.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah, and then
that's a good
for the
point. Let me,
second
yeah,
MG
let's
team, I would just set it up like in a church somewhere,
pause for a
facing
second.
it this way, or putting it in a tower, even facing this way. That would be interesting as well because then you can cover both these two.
Yeah, so like to kind of expand that first point, we'll bounce
Yeah.
on that second one. Is blue the favorite here? I mean, that's kind of a good thing that we're gonna have to test, right? Because there is
Yeah.
great questions. Oh, we got some more comments for the bunker. I like to have only 2 zones captured turn 1, so you get a free squad. Yeah, kind of. I touched on that a little bit. That opens a little bit more freedom with your openings. For instance, blue can send an infantry here to kind of capture that round 2. So there's definitely that. That's also fun to have more options going into round 2. As red, you need to go SU to have that conscript speed. Yeah, red could Soviet player does get a lot of cool options as red, kind of reward that aggression. And yeah, just us there. So the Wehrmacht versus Soviet. This could be a cool. You're right. Very cool. Kind of goes with the theme of the map, right? Moscow outskirts,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the theme that this is kind of symbolically have this being Moscow, right? And then the Soviets
Hmm.
here kind of deploying in that side. So it'd be a cool map for them. Again, a lot of maps don't necessarily need to have that in mind. Obviously, feel free as a player to play what factions you wish, but people love to have, obviously Soviets on the Stalingrad map. It just kind of helps with the theme, pulling you in. So I
Yeah.
like that opening. And Wehrmacht here, let's talk about this MG. Yeah, that is a good question. Like, MG pointing this way, right? Kind of covering 2 from that 1 hex. It's a little bit more
Yeah.
defensive of a hex, but counterpoint can red. It doesn't look like round 2 very easily. But could they sneak here? I almost think as red, right? If I see MG here,
1, 2,
I
3.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Oh no,
am.
they with Russians they can move forward, so they still
Mhm.
could capture this point and then assault the bunker.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Is that too strong of an opening for Soviets? That's kind of a thing to note right now, right? So that's something we could discuss right
Hmm.
now before we finalize the map. Um,
Yeah,
that
and that's kind of why I say like as a blue player when you start the game, if I had a faction with MG teams, I want to start second. So the round after I can start first. If I then deploy my MG team here
mhm.
and you are here, then or maybe even here because that would be more dangerous. Then yeah,
Well,
they
no,
still
see,
could
you see what you're saying
circle
though?
around a little
Yeah,
bit,
so
but
right, so yeah, talk about an MG here, right? Kind of facing this way. Any
yeah.
faction could have put an infantry here and then charge into the bunker, and then they're in this bunker. You can't like if you're already set up. You already spent 2 of your CP, 1 to move if you were there, 1 to set up, and you're already facing this way. Yeah, they'd eat an Overwatch damage, but then during the damage phase, they could just shoot back at you and kind of make up
Hmm.
that damage. So
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
kind of cool things that, yeah, so Soviets could go here, right? But then are they giving up? Are they focusing too much on the center? Is
Yeah.
that too many troops here? Because then what does this guy do? This guy probably goes here. Doesn't have the greatest option out here.
Hmm.
So then where do they go? This one probably wants to go here, right? So again, it's kind of interesting. Like you have to think a few rounds into it. This is kind of a thing that happens on 12 Palm, for instance, as well. I don't
Hmm.
want to open that map up, but there is something at 4 hexes away. And is that an acceptable thing in terms of balance? So like Soviets, their style, as we get into that video, that overview, I'd like to do, coming up soon with Slava, that overview is going to focus a lot on those conscripts, a lot of the discussion of what that opens up. As you kind of see it here, I might reference this video because the conscripts really do open up. Hey, look, I could start here, like speed die 1, 2, 3, and get this point. But on the counter, kind of like Rudy's saying, if Wehrmacht has an MG here, what's that? The conscript's probably going to be inclined to go somewhere else. So there's just a lot of layers to this that hopefully you could start to see where, yeah, like, okay, maybe Soviets do have an advantage here, maybe not. Really need to see a handful of games in this map to really get a feel for this map, but even still, like, that's a great point, but is fuel and munitions that strong? Is that easy to counter capture? It's in the center of the map, so it's definitely kind of easy potentially to counter capture, but then it kind of comes down to, is there kind of a side note to think about, is there just too easy to defend because it's so centralized. But
Hmm.
is that critical to the game? So that I would argue again, the victory points are what wins the game, and they're kind of more tucked away in kind of interesting spots. This is a little bit. I know this is probably a little bit easier for both sides to compete over because it's a little bit off centered enough.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I'd like to see how this plays. So I'm very excited. I think we don't want to make this.
I'm
I know we're
curious
just kind
too.
of rambling. Don't want to make it too long, but to try to give you some insight how you can kind of get a map up and running in a fair good order, kind of keeping some key notions in mind, some key concepts. But I would say, yeah, I mean, so this one just says a side note, it just says a reminder. Ardennes Forest and Morrow River are in the 2-player core set. That's kind of the new map and the update kit. And
Yeah.
to do this map, you will need the legacy map because the hexes won't line up. So the legacy map update pack. So this is kind of one of those missions that, is this map interesting to you? Do you want all these maps?
Mhm.
Returning back is
Dugo,
how many maps do you want?
yeah.
Are you afraid
Dugo
of?
asks,
Oh, good question. Go
aren't you
ahead.
afraid of the three victory point stalemate? So like one team has the 3 victory points here, the other has the 3 victory points here,
Uh,
or just like 3 here and the 3 here.
so I would like to see what 3. Is there a 3 you have in mind on this map that you're afraid of? Because I think there's, for instance, both factions. these 4 in the center, you might not think this is in play because it's so close to the spawn, but because of all these other capture points, there's going to be units kind of on those, right? And none of these require infantry. You can capture them with your ultralight tier 1 vehicle. So I
Mhm.
think all of these 4 are always in play. And then this one over here on the side, you can, yeah. So let's count how many hexes away. Let's start there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's a little bit of a hike for red to get there, and I think that's gonna be 8 for blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's at least symmetrical. We like that, right? In this kind of distance. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 for red to get here, but I would say blue's favored to capture it, right? So blue's favored possibly to capture it because even though they're a little bit further away, they kind of have this nice opening here and then this awesome building here, where kind of red has that conversely over here. Even though they're a little bit further away, they have this nice building here, which is very centralized, where blue
Mhm.
might want to kind of send someone down the side across the ice over here on the outside because maybe round 2, you spawn a tier 2 infantry and kind of head them in that direction, especially one with a speed die, conscripts or a weapon team with a speed die like USMG. Maybe you just send them here,
Yeah.
and then 1, 2, you send them on the ice with a speed die, then 1, 2, 3, and set them up in this building. So there's a lot of choices to kind of play out in your head here. So far, yeah, I mean, I potentially see these side ones as kind of answering your question. These side ones might be, it depends on how much you commit your resources. So how many resources? Again, just an MG for US, very inexpensive in investment to commit to going to capture that. If red's not committing anything, blue can easily capture it with an MG. So there's just these little bits.
If blue would go
So
American or red as well, they can go there, I think, in one turn. So you have the MG team, give them the speed die and buy a jeep.
hmm,
So then you have one to get him in the team. So he has 3 CP left. Jeep has 1 speed, I believe. So it goes 1 and then 2, 3, 4, and then the NG team can still use 3 CP to 1, 2, 3 get into the building.
yeah, with if they have the MG having the speed die as well.
Yeah, with the MG having the speed die, which is very easy to obtain because
Very
of the
right.
1 experience you get at the start. So
Exactly.
it's like a start I like to do with the US. Put an MG team in the Jeep and move them across the field. Set them up in a building. If they can deploy, it's nice. If they can't, then hope for the best.
All right.
But yeah,
Yep. So there's
fun
just
stuff.
just to save it in TTS here. There's just kind of some locking things I need to do, but obviously I kind of started to do that as Rudy was kind of discussing the map. I don't want to bore you too much as I kind of get this finalized for TTS, so we can get play testers available to play it and kind of give feedback before we obviously finalize it and get it out there in the final mission booklet going to print. So thanks again for watching. Again, if you have any comments, feel free to comment below on our Discord, Facebook, in the Kickstarter comments as we're live, and
Here on the YouTube channel as well.
yeah, BGG. So there's a lot of spots. So again, if you have any questions about this map, anything about map design in general, or any other questions, please let us know. But thanks for watching. Even if you watch this